Big time fight coming up this weekend. We've got Bill Algeo, Senor Perfecto, taking on Ricardo Ramos. Matt, I absolutely love this fight, but we just talked about it a few weeks ago. So we're going to throw it back to the old prediction video. We're going to update the odds. We're going to give our final pick and prediction on this one. And listen, there's not a lot of people from King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. Anyway, I did the research for Bill Algeo's last fight, and I talked all about it. So I'm done with that. What I will focus on is the fact that for Bill Algeo, it was strength of schedule coming into the UFC. And yeah, the guy's got 5 losses to 14 wins. But you look at the last 2, and hey, Brendan Loughnane on Contender Series, that's going to happen. Everyone and their dog thought that Brendan Loughnane deserved a UFC contract, and Dana White said no. I'm like Roger Goodell. I don't want to have fun. Not signing him. PFL, fill your boots. So for the man himself, Algeo, he goes back to CFFC, beats Tim Dooling, recognizable regional name, and then he gets the call to fight Ricardo Lamas. And in that fight, it's a loss. It's a decision loss. And if you only watch the 3rd round, Lamas went off. But in the first 2 rounds, it was closer than that. And Bill Algeo actually, put in good work. I was really impressed with him. So in his next time out, did I pick Bill Algeo to beat Spike Carlisle? Honestly, I can't remember at this point. I'd be honest if I could. I can't remember, but he sent Spike Carlisle packing to LFA, and he absolutely owned. So for Bill Algeo, what do you know? This guy's baseline good at everything. He's a decent striker. He has decent cardio, except for in the Lamas fight. But they went back and forth like crazy.
Also, Lamas, one of the best featherweights of all time who's never got a belt. So if you lose to him on a very short notice, that's no big deal.
He can really do just about everything quite well for Bill Algeo. For Ricardo Ramos, I have zero idea what this guy's baseline is. Because on one day, honest to goodness, I think he's a top 10 UFC featherweight. I'm not lying. He's only 25 years old. He's out of Brazil. He trains at Team Alpha Male. You look at the corner. Raymond Daniels is training with him. You got Alex Munoz that's on this card. So with Daniels, excellent striking coach. With Alex Munoz, excellent wrestling coaching. You're really going to get all of those things. With Ricardo Ramos, he's a guy that came in on Dana White's Looking for a Fight, Bangor main edition. Been there and done that with NEF, but you look at that fight and you look at what he's been able to do in the UFC, and it's kind of a mixed bag because on his best day, he's beating Ayman Zahabi and he's looking amazing. Double spinnings, finishes him, looks great. And then you look at the losses. I mean, Lerone Murphy, I think he's a great fighter. I really do like Lerone Murphy, but Murphy was able to dismantle him, and when he had Ramos hurt, he turtled up like he was totally done. His grappling's good. He's a good jiu-jitsu practitioner, but his wrestling's weird. It's not great offensively, but it's good defensively. He can get really tired, and that's another thing. For a young guy to get tired like that, I worry about it. But again, when Ricardo Ramos is on, in my mind's eye, he's a good fighter, and he has a very high potential. So for me, it's almost like Ramos has a very high ceiling. For Bill Algeo, he's never going to win the featherweight title. I don't think he is. I'm sure Bill does. I'm sure his gym even thinks it. Everybody around him thinks it. So I'm not saying that to, poo-poo Bill Algeo. To me, Ramos has a very high ceiling. He's a much younger fighter. But this is a weird one.
You did with Ricardo Ramos what I did with Jonathan Martinez. So I'm just going to tell you now, he's never going to be in the top 10 of the featherweight division or the bantamweight division. He can have good fights with some guys, but here's the problem with Ricardo Ramos. And I think we're sort of, I don't know if we're the victims or if we're the people putting it out. He doesn't have that much knockout power. Yeah, the knockout against Ayman Zahabi was great, but I do think Ramos is one of those guys who, he's a victim to his own highlight reel, if that makes any sense whatsoever. When I think of Ricardo Ramos, of course the first thing I think of is that double spinning elbow against Ayman Zahabi, but that's what I fixate on, and I look away from the fact that, well, he doesn't deal with pressure all that well. He has good striking technique, but that's really the problem. He doesn't have enough pop to put guys down with his striking, but he doesn't have the cardio to really overwhelm guys with his volume. And for Ramos, you talk about the wrestling, for me, if he just had cardio, he'd be that much better of a fighter, because if he could match his output with his jiu-jitsu credentials, I do think we'd have a very dangerous fighter here. Could you imagine if Ricardo Ramos could go out there, throw a lot of volume against the cage to a guy, make them sort of cover up, and then take them down? You're dealing with a very dangerous fighter. My problem is, Ramos is a guy who will just throw single shots, and a lot of his single shots, they do look nice. He has a nice spinning back kick to the body, for instance. It looks kind of Max Holloway-ish when you look at it by itself, but my problem is there's nothing that comes after that spinning back kick to the body. He will just kind of stand there and look at his opponent in the mirror, and one thing Algeo is really good at, even just go back to the Lamas fight, and he lost that fight. When Lamas would stand there at range and try to make reads on Algeo, Algeo's rangy and awkward for this division. and he can throw really weird techniques, and he's a guy who, he lifts his leg before he throws the kick. I know that's a very weird thing, but I wanted to make sure I talked about this for Robert Whittaker, so I feel like I have to for Algio. He doesn't throw kicks in a traditional sense where he brings his whole leg up at once. He'll bring his knee up, and then he flicks out his leg at the end. It's interesting because the kick won't have as much power behind it, but you're going to find openings in your opponent's defense a lot better when you throw kicks that way, and that's something Algio is actually really good at doing. So for Ricardo Ramos, I just don't know how he's going to get this floor to the mat, and even if he does get the fight to the mat, I don't think it's a cakewalk for him. And Algio, I agree with you. I don't think he is going to have the featherweight strap at any point. I don't think he's going to be a top 5 guy, but I do think he's going to offer a very hard fight and a very fun fight for anybody outside of the top 5. I really do think that. If Algio, I can see him being one of those names where, oh, a top 5 featherweight matchup falls out, they just throw his name in there. Will he beat the guy who he's matched up with? No, but I can see that being a fight of the night type of fight. So for Algio, I just see him having the higher ceiling out of these two.
For me, if you look at Ramos, the perfect kind of comparison fight that he's already had, the split decision win over Kyung Ho Gong, and he's a very, very good grappler. He can really wrestle quite well. You want to watch an exciting fighter that you don't hear enough about, Kyung Ho Gong is that fighter. If Ramos fights like that, maybe he could beat Bill Algio. For Bill Algio, you just got to wear on him. You just got to close that distance, create that gap. And for Ramos, I think of him more as a distance striker. Again, with Zahabi, it was in tight with those elbows. It was behind the black lines. He was able to do it. But for the most part, it's a lot of long, rangy attacks. And if you can pressure him, you can beat him. All right, Matt, so getting back to the odds, this one has Algio now at a minus 120 or thereabouts. The odds haven't really changed this week. Ramos coming back about a plus 100. And if we have a look over on Tapology for the total votes, really close. 959 total votes, 58% going with Ramos, 74% by decision for the 42% that have Algio, 81% by decision. Now for Bill Algio, again, he was a guy coming into the UFC. You looked at it like he had lost to Brendan Loughnane on Contender Series where, hey, Dana, go look at the PFL right now. Brendan Loughnane might win the season. You never know. And then you look at the fight after that. Algio gets beat by Lamas. But before that third round, he didn't look too bad. He didn't look like a fish out of water. And then he beat Spike Carlisle. Pretty impressive. For Ramos, again, the 5 on in, a little bit spread out, still a young prospect coming out of Team Alpha Male. I absolutely love the fight, so what's the final pick here?
It's a weird fight, honestly, because the odds are close, but I gotta be honest, I like Bill Algio a lot in this fight, and I don't know if it's just because I don't like a lot of what I've seen out of Ricardo Ramos, but up at 145 pounds, I just don't think that's Ramos' best division. I think him at 135 is the more ideal weight class, because now you're fighting Bill Algio, who's a massive 145.
Big guy.
He basically looks like a lightweight. When he fought Ricardo Lamas, he looked way bigger than Lamas, who not only is a really, really good featherweight, but a guy who was at the top of the division too, and a big featherweight. So I just think it's a weird fight for Ramos. I'm a little bit, I guess, just flabbergasted as to why so many people on Tapology think he's going to win and why the odds are so close. Because, like you had mentioned with Algio, so you lost to Brendan Loughnane and Ricardo Lamas. Who cares? There's a lot of fighters who have a lot worse losses on their records. So for me, I'm pretty surprised that the odds are as close as they are.
I like Bill Algio as well. Really close fight. I can't wait to see the comments down below because Matt is high on Bill Algio, and I like Algio as well.
He's not Jonathan Martinez, but I do think he's going to do well.
For Ramos, I do like that Team Alpha Male connection. He has plenty of teammates fighting on this card, including Cody Garbrandt up at the top, and Yan Xiaonan, who's fighting in the co-main event. But yeah, both of us going with Bill Algio in the fight. Absolutely love it. Like I said, Font Garbrandt in the main event. Esparza taking on Yan Xiaonan in the co-main event. You're not going to want to miss that. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.